Good afternoon and welcome to this week's All in the Mishpacha image for the ages, the Brisker of. I never would have recognized this as the Brisker of if they didn't tell me this was the Brisker of. Today I will be talking about not the Brisker of, but something related to the Brisker of. It's called More Than a Memory. I think is maybe the feature article they have. He was a latecomer to Torah learning who utilized a creative system of mnemonics and memory aids to master what he'd miss. Now, with the tenacity and ingenuity, Rabbi Avram Goldhar has built a system that brings mastery of the entire Shas to the everyman, and the satisfaction of total recall to those who despaired of ever owning their learning. If you've ever heard about it, there's a new phenomenon going on in Klal Yisrael, Zichru. Zichru program 1,000. This is the first celebration they had. They've completed 1,000 dapim in Daf Yomi. That's really what it is, based around Daf Yomi. I also learned Daf Yomi. I finished 1,000 dapim. It says, celebrating the success of Lomdi Daf Yomi, remembering the daf and reaching 1,000 blot milestone. Apparently there's a person named Rabbi Avram Goldhar. I believe this is him over here. If you didn't recognize him, maybe he's your next door neighbor. This event occurred in Passaic. It basically featured, let's see if they have a picture of it. Here it is, a picture. We saw this picture before, but this is the picture of the dais over here. They had 21 people who were being tested on the first 1,000 blot of Daf Yomi. They had learned Daf Yomi, just like everybody else, but they remember Daf Yomi. They don't remember everything in Daf Yomi, but they remember the three main points in every Daf in Daf Yomi. So they had this whole event, dinner, all the family members, and they had 3 people testing them. If you've ever seen the Shas Yidden network of Kolim, sometimes they have these tests where the Gedolim come. Even Rabbi Eli Stefansky comes, because he's referred to now as Harav Hagon Shlita. Eli Stefansky comes and tests these Shas Yidden, who basically learn the entire Shas in 1 year, many times in 1 year, and they have 40 of them sitting over there, and they're throwing out questions. Where in Shas does it talk about Motzi Michaveru Alav Araya? Babakama Dafnon. Bamatzia, where is it referenced that they talk about the Machlokas, Rabbi Shimon or Yehuda about Muksa? Shabbos, Daf Kufnun Dalet. And Beitza Daf Mem, they talk about, they're throwing it out, but what they do is they have all these Shas Yidden over there together. How many of those people are actually saying the answers? That's why they do it all together. If you ever seen these performances over there, they're asking questions. Whoever knows the answer, they shout it out. So it could be, all of them know the answer. 40 people shout it out, and sometimes just one person shouting it out. The reason they have all of them answering the same question, because if you pin them down, you ask the questions to them individually, a lot of them wouldn't know the answer to all these questions. So they have the same format over here at Zichru. 21 Balabatim, people that are not Rabbanim. They have applied the memory system called Zichru of Rabbi Avram Goldhar, and have successfully mastered 1,000 blot and shots. So we're testing on 1,000 blot, which is a lot of blot and shots to remember. And they asked them similar questions. Where in the Gemara does it talk about Shkias Achama? Where in the Gemara does it talk about Teis Chavim? Where in the Gemara does it talk about Yehuda Nasi? I don't know. I didn't see. I don't know if there was a recording of what happened, but the same thing. They're sitting at the table and they're answering these questions. People were blown away. How could they remember these? Now, here I'll just show you a picture of some of the. These are some of the samplings of what the review books look like that they get. For example, this is here it says Maseches Nazir Daf Dalet. So they show a picture here Daf Dalet of a door. Dalet sounds like door. Or Daf Hey, they say hey, they put a picture of hay. They make a story to help you remember that daf. Something that happened in that daf. If you're doing Nazir Daf Hey, here they have a quote, someone giving a haircut day 31. Is it good you didn't shave on? It is good you didn't shave on the 30th day because it is a rabbinic decree. So it helps you remember. They give a mnemonic with the the daf of the day to help you remember which daf it is. They give you a little bit story, cute little comic story over here, and they give you 3 points to remember. For example, Nazir daf. Hey, the 3 points are: number one, machlokas about the frequency of shalom's trimming. Number two, machlokas about the 30-day length of standard naziris. 3, the Mishnah says that he shaves on the 31st day, yet shaving on the 30th day is valid. Okay. So it gives you 3 basic points to summarize what happened in that daf. Now, if you ask me, it looks like for kids, the Mishnah is for kids, the drawings for the kids. Because I'll tell you, at the end of the day, I'm going to give my raw, unadulterated opinion. I'm a Magid Shir who does daf yomi. I don't employ a Zichru method, and I think it's a waste of time, honestly. I'll tell you why it's a waste of time, because even the Gedolim, the biggest Rabbanim in the world, who have Shas at their fingertips, and there are a lot of Rabbanim like that. I don't know, a lot. There's a number of Rabbanim that, have instant recall of, almost any daf in Shas. And they can quote you, like these Shas Yidden, like these Zichru participants, they can quote you, whatever statement you need from Shas, they'll quote it to you. Does that help you? Especially nowadays, does it really help you? No, it doesn't help you. We have computers nowadays. They have this computer program. I forgot what it's called. Encyclopedia Talmudica. It's not called Encyclopedia Talmudica. It's called something else. I don't know. Something with Shas. I don't know. Clear Shas or something like that. Where they have, you can just type in a word. I'll tell you which daf it is in Shas. We have computers nowadays. All this stuff is stored. The daf yomi is stored on computers. We need these people to tell us, the 3 points. These people can't even tell you what the actual words of the Gemara says. They can just tell you the 3 main points of the daf. Now, the problem with this is the same problem with all the Gedolim that have recall of the words in the Gemara, is that the point of the Gemara, the ultimate point of the Gemara, is called Torah Shabbal Peh, even though we like to think of it as Art Scroll and Zichru and Shas Yidden. But at the end of the day, it's called Torah Shabbal Peh. And even though Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wrote the Gemara down, the Mishnah is down, the Gemara was written down, so we shouldn't forget it. But the important point, even nowadays, it's called Torah Shabbal Peh. The only way, the point of Torah, is that it should be an oral Torah. It should be an ongoing discussion. And that's what Torah really is. Even if you knew and you have written down an art scroll or Zichru that you can remember exactly what's on the daf, doesn't help you. Because you got to be in the sugya. You got to have a sharp mind to know what the sugya is talking about. And really, the void these people are feeling. A lot of people go through Shas. This is why this program was created. People go through daf yomi at rapid speed. A daf a day is very fast. A lot of Gedolim can't even keep up with daf yomi. They don't learn daf yomi. Novominsker Rebbe said he can't learn daf yomi. It's too fast for him. The Gadol Ador said that. He passed away during COVID. But people can't keep up with, so they feel like they're not remembering anything and they're learning. So they turn to programs of Zichru, where you could apparently chazer a daf in a minute or two, and people are speaking about on their ways to chasanas, or they're sitting at a table at a chasana. Instead of talking to the people at chasana, we don't do that anymore. We just review in our heads, 45 of Mesechus Yevamos. I review Mesechus Yevamos. He says in this article, one person said, I review Mesechus Yevamos once on my 45-minute drive to the chasana, and once on my 45-minute drive back from the chasana. I reviewed it twice, Mesechus Yevamos. Now, we didn't review every word in Mesechus Yevamos. He reviewed the 3 points on every daf, which helps him remember the 3 main points, which help him remember the thing. It's beautiful that they remember these things, but even if you're a gadol and you remember the exact words of the Gemara, it doesn't help you with understanding the Gemara and being able to know what question to ask and how to understand and get to a conclusion of what the Gemara is really saying. And that's what Torah Shabbal Peh is, the way the Gemara is written. The Gemara is written, in a question and answer format. That's why it's written like that. It's written, it's not just a list of facts. It's not like Shulchan Aruch. Torah is an ongoing discussion, and when there's Tanaic opinions, Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshri and Baroka argue about something, they're arguing, they're both valid opinions. It doesn't mean they're both true, though, right? That's, we say, Elu Elu Divrei Elokim Chaim. They're both words of God, meaning an opinion about the Torah is a valid opinion. It doesn't mean you're right. And that's the point of the discussion in the Gemara, to find out who's more right. And a lot of times, the Gemara doesn't conclude one way or the other, and it's an ongoing discussion. Teku, even says Teku. We still have to try to figure out, bring proofs one way or the other, who's right and who's wrong. And the only way to get access to the truth of the Torah is Eon. That's what they're missing. People think the void they're missing is not remembering the Gemara. Maybe it feels nice to remember in your mind. You think great of yourself. Oh, I remember 1,000 blood. Who cares? Who cares? Honestly, if you really want to make your daf yomi valuable, and I'm not just doing this, to promote myself, but it's true. You got to have Ian in your day. Ian, you had to learn the Torah with Ian, and I'm not talking about going to Sterling Borenstein's raid. You got to learn incisive Ian. Know how to ask good questions and good answers, and that's what I do every day. I give an 8-minute Ian shir on every daf, an original chiddush that I came up with that day. Because my mind is incisive. I learned for 15, 20 years. I didn't look at Rashi and Tosfos when I learned. I learned the Gemara, and I had questions on the Gemara, or I developed questions. I developed investigation, analytical debates. I had 2 ways of interpreting Gemara, 3 ways of interpreting Gemara, trying to figure out what's the right way, what's not the right way. And a lot of my shiurim are based on that. In 8 minutes, I give you some great questions and a unique approach, a new approach to the Gemara that oftentimes argues with Art Scroll. And whether I'm right or wrong, that's not the point. The point is, and it's not important to remember what I said or not, but the point is that for you as a person who's learning Daf Yomi, you want to be a person who knows how to ask questions and try to formulate your own answers to those questions. And you'll see that if you're able to do that and to machadish something, to ask questions, it's not easy. It's not easy. It takes time. I really recommend listening to my Ian Shiurim because I do a very good job of asking very pertinent questions about the main point in the sugya. Your sugyas usually revolve around 1 or 2 points, analytic debate, like Rav Chaim Brisker Chakira or something like that, to figure out which way you're learning. Mixas Hayom Kakulo. Is Mixas Hayom Kakulo because part of a day is the entire day? It is the entire day. Or is it because Mixas Hayom Kakulo is part of a day? Half a day is enough. There's a difference in the two. Is it like the whole day? It's exactly equivalent to a whole day. Or it's just that's enough to be called a day. And there's a fundamental difference. I talked about it in one of my shiurim, Mr. Kakulo. It just comes back to my memory. Listen, I probably could recall some of these things that these Zichru participants can recall, but it's not important to me. And it never was in my learning. I'm not a person who has instant recall of all the Gemaras. I'm familiar with a lot of Gemaras. I've been learning for 20 years. But I will tell you that if you're able to learn a Gemara B'Iyan incisively, ask good questions, because formulating an answer, a unique answer, starts from asking a good question, right? It's not that they say half of a chiddush is the question. No, all of the chiddush is the question. If you don't have a good question, you're not going to come with chiddushim. You have to ask good questions, maybe 2 or 3 good questions, or just take a halacha or a din that we paskin like, and maybe think of 2 or 3 different ways. There's just 2 different ways of looking at it. Or you take Machlos Abaye and Rava. They state 2 different opinions, but Rav Machtan or Pada, isn't it 0 as 29 days or 30 days? What do they argue about? What fundamentally argue? Yes, the Gemara gives you, drushes they argue about, but in Svara, in logic, what do they argue? There's always a logical debate. Tanoim have logical debates. They tell you their opinions. They don't often tell you the logical debate. Sometimes the Gemara does. But even when the Gemara does, you have to explain. There's different ways of explaining what the logical debate is. So Abaye and Rava Machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda and Meir of Machlokes, figure out exactly what they're arguing about. It's not so common. Rashi and Tosfos, if you're learning Rashi and Tosfos, what are Rashi and Tosfos arguing about? What is the logical debate over there? I don't recommend reading Rishonim. I believe every person could be their own Rishon. I don't believe that Achronim are inferior to Rishonim. I don't believe Gaonim or Rishonim are inferior to Gaonim. All the Gemara says is that Amoraim can't argue on Tanoim. It doesn't say that Achronim can't argue on Rishonim. This is made up stuff. You're just as capable as any Rishon of giving your own shot in the Gemara. If it makes more sense and it's more mistabra, it makes more sense in the Gemara. So you could prove that, and you should be talking about it. It's an ongoing discussion. And if you want to talk at a wedding table about something, talk about something be'iyah. Talk about something, incisive, not about remembering like a child. These pictures are children-like because these people are like children, honestly. The Zichru program is for children. It's for beginners, for real beginners. If you want to be someone who really acquires your learning and acquires the Torah, you have to be someone who knows how to learn be'iyah. And obviously, a lot of people learn Daf Yomi, do not have experience learning yeshiva, and they're working most of the day. They don't have time to learn be'iyah. So listen to my shir for 8 minutes. Ellie's Fancy gives 8 minutes review, similar to Zichru, I guess, summary of the Daf. Better use your 8 minutes to listen to my Ian shir on the Daf, especially if you're learning Daf Yomi. It'll help you remember the Daf also very well. And the difference is that you'll remember it in a very different way than this, let's say, Zichru way. Zichru is going to tell you a synopsis, the three main points of the daf. But you'll have no angle and you'll have no depth in your learning to know really what the sugya hinges on. Like today we did a machlokes about Adim, right? Two different sets of Adim have different accounts, whether the person was accepting 2 terms in a zeros or 5 terms in a zeros, right? So there was a discussion of, what kind of Adis do you need for Naziris? You need Adis like Dini Mominus or an Adis like Isurim? Is Naziris Dini Mominus because you bring Karbanos? Or is it like Isurim? And if you would ask these, even the Shas Yidden, you'd ask them that question, you'd say, is Naziris considered Dini Mominus or considered Isser V'Heter? They'd be scratching their heads. They have no idea. They would have no idea because there's no Gemara that says it. The Gemara doesn't say that. But if you listen to my Ian share, you realize that's what the Machlokes hinges on. Machlokes hinges on whether you view it as Dini Mominus or Yisurim, the two different Machlokes Tanoim, the Tanakama and the Gemara, which offered a different Tana, Rabbi Yishmael ben Oshir and Mebroka. And that's how I explain the Machlokes over there. You would never come to that conclusion unless you listen to my show, or at least you learned it yourself, Ian, and was able to delve into that, or Safek, the Rice of the Chumrah, if you don't have that angle and you don't have that perspicacity in the Gemara, it's irrelevant that you can remember these things. You could also go on the computer and type up these things. Why is it so important? It just makes you feel good. It makes you arrogant, right? What arrogance? Arrogance means you think greater of yourself than you really are, because you're really nothing. The fact that you remember 1,000 blot, the 3 main points on 1,000 blot. Good. I can go and type it up. This guy has it typed up in the book. Go look in your book. Go look on the computer. It's not worth anything. It's invaluable, and it's conceited. These occasions, I think even Shas Yidden, this whole thing is stupid. If they're learning Shas once a year, or 5 times a year, they're not learning so much Be'in probably. And if you want to know halacha, right, you want to paskan halacha. That's the goal of the Torah is halacha l'maisa, right? We learn Torah to do the mitzvah. So if you want to have even a chance of understanding the true halacha, right, which comes from the Gemara, you have to learn it Be'in. If you don't learn it Be'in, there's no way you can paskan a shaila, right? There's no Rav in the world who can paskan shailas doesn't have experience with Ian. It's impossible. The Gemara is not a Shulchan Aruch. The Gemara does not have a list like the Shulchan Aruch Hilmi. Shulchan Aruch, I give a share of Shulchan Aruch Hilmi. I also have an Ian share of Shulchan Aruch Hilmi because I believe also Shulchan Aruch Hilmi is an ongoing discussion. I don't take, obviously, halacha l'maisa, I'm going to say we paskin like the Shulchan Aruch, or the Ramah, if you're Ashkenazi, or the Mishnah Berurah, the Posek Akron, but practically it's an ongoing debate. You could also argue in the Shulchan Aruch, and I do. You can check out Shulchan Aruch Hilmi share Ian to lean on also. I give. That's the first part I want to talk about today. The second part I want to talk about today, because there is time for 2 things. Here you see it. It's called Money Talks, the Seminary Conundrum, with Rabbi Zachariah Greenwald and Mrs. Ahuva Hyman. This is an ongoing discussion from apparently a podcast they had on the Kosher Money podcast, which is part of the Living L'Chaim channel. They had an interview with these people and talk about seminary. I think the podcast was titled, Can We Afford Seminary or Can We Afford Not to, right? Or something like that. Like the seminary is so important in Judaism, right? Sending our girls after they finish high school to seminary in Israel for a year, or Greenwald even suggests 2 years now, is so great that even though it costs $40,000 for parents that barely have money to make a wedding for their kid, it's absolutely necessary, according to Rabbi Greenwald. So let's talk about this. He says what the cost of seminary. He says around $40,000, including the flights and the spending money, and to make sure you pay for all your daughter smoothies. I saw a video where they said, what a seminary girl does during her seminary year. 6,565 smoothies, 437 visits to the coast. It's an exaggeration. Some of them take it seriously. What is interesting is they interviewed 2 people, right? Zachariah Greenwald, who owns a seminary, called Maor, I think it's called. And they interviewed the second person, is a woman who's the head of a high school in Baltimore, right? Where the high school is deciding or advising the students which seminary to go to, or to go to seminary or not. So this Rabbi Greenwald admits over here in this interview, which is very interesting. He admits that they say, why is so expensive. Why don't you have scholarships like yeshivas and things like that? He says, no one's willing to pay. There's no fundraising. It's not even a topic of discussion to fundraise for a seminary. No one's willing to give you money for it. So they have to charge an exorbitant price to pay for their costs. He says, listen, he wasn't planning on doing a seminary. He was working in a yeshiva or something. Someone came over to him and said, listen, why do you open up a seminary? He's like, why do I need to open another seminary? He said, there's always room for another seminary. Every year, another seminary or two opens up. They have millions of seminaries out there. It's a business. He says he runs it for profit over here. I don't know technically in the tax code whether he runs this called nonprofit or profit, but he says they make a profit off it. This is a business over here. Everyone's opening seminaries. Every year or two, they open new seminaries for girls, more and more seminaries, because they make a business. They charge $40,000 a girl, right? You have 100 girls. I was just talking to a girl a seminary girl from my wife's family came over. I said, how many girls? A new seminary, 4-year-old seminary. How many girls? 100 girls. They charge $25,000 to $24,000. I said, it's pretty good. $2.4 million they're making, How much do you pay, a Mora from Eretz Yisrael, barely, minimum wage even. So you can pay them less than minimum wage. So you're making a nice hefty profit. There's a reason more of these seminaries keep on opening up. There's such a proliferation of these seminaries. Because it's a great business, right? You live in Eretz Yisrael. It's hard to make money. Just open up a seminary for the girls. Now, right, Greenwald says it's an absolute need. It's not just a want. He says it's a need. Not only that, he says that he believes girls need a second year in seminary, right? He said, you mentioned that you encourage Shana Bays because what could be done in 1 year now needs to. What does that mean? They asked him. He says, education has become more difficult. Our entire society has become more superficial. It takes longer to give meaning and connection, and girls are less ready than ever to get married. I strongly disagree with the push to get boys to go out earlier. I think it's wrong, both educationally and psychologically. Whatever. He talks about going out earlier. He says girls and boys should go out later. Okay. They're not mature enough. So they need an extra year of seminary. Now, it's interesting to contrast this. I read a little bit of this Mrs. Hyman, who's from a high school in Baltimore. And the first thing she opens up with, she says, I'll read it from here. She says, as a mother and school director, how do you see seminary affecting families? This is what she says. We need to change the dialogue here so that we can allow people to do what works for their families without feeling bad. And that has to start way earlier. About educating your children about money cannot start when they're in 12th grade and want to go to seminary. They need to understand from much earlier that there are needs and there are wants. And sometimes we blur the two. For example, seminary is a wonderful thing. Is it a need? Only for a very few people, mainly people with complicated home situations who must get away. For most people, it's a want. She admits the truth. It's a want. She's not in the business, right? She's running a high school. She's maybe maybe she gets a cut. I don't think so. I'm making that up. But, she's telling you honestly, and she even admits at the end, she said she had one daughter, she had a number of daughters that went to seminary, and she had one daughter that didn't go to seminary. So they said, in the podcast you mentioned that one of your daughters chose not to go to seminary. Do you find that her levels of maturity or independence were negatively affected? What is her answer? The opposite. I found that she grew up faster because she made decisions that were good decisions, and they involved really thinking things through and working towards a specific goal. She also got married quickly, and she made a decision with her husband to move away from her parents and his parents during year one so they could start off independently and then come back. Right? She says this. She's quoted as saying, they asked her, do you think seminary is a core chinuch requirement? The critical piece she answers is for a girl to go off on her own, to learn how to be independent and to make decisions. Do I think that needs to happen in seminary? I actually think sending a girl to seminary can give a very mixed message. Oh yeah. We need to send you off somewhere, she's quoting, at $40,000 expense to learn how to be someone who works very hard to support a husband with very little money, right? That's just, you pay $40,000, they inculcate in these girls that they have to marry these avrechim, right? You're paying $40,000 for this, or maybe 2 years of $40,000, according to our Greenwald, you should be paying, to tell them how they have to marry the Talmud Chacham, who's going to have no money, right? You're going to have to work very hard. The husband with very little money in your life. It's a very confusing message. I've seen parents send their children off with open credit cards. You don't like the school food? Go eat somewhere else. But then don't expect your child to turn around and be prepared for a complicated life. I look at the unprecedented number of quick divorces and wonder how much of that comes from young people not having the grit to deal with situations that are not perfect. Everything is handed to them and they're not prepared to be grown-ups. What do we expect? She says it all. She's telling you an honest perspective. She's not someone who is making a business out of this. It's not a business decision for her. She's telling you the honest truth. It's a want. It's a want, and maybe a want that's not good for you, and not good. This is the problem I talked about a couple of weeks ago when I talked about shidduch crisis, and I had a Jewish money where I talked about the financial aspect of the shidduch crisis, and I blamed a lot of it on the seminary, specifically on the seminaries, also on the yeshivas. The seminaries, even 1 year of seminary, they drill into the girls how you have to marry a learning boy, the top learning boy. And if you come for a second year, they drill it in a second time. And these girls come home and they go into the world, they go to college, they get jobs, they start working, they're exposed to the world, and they're all able to marry the best guy, because the seminaries all tell them the same thing. But how many of those guys are really good? In fact, a person who wrote a letter to the editor summed up what I was saying and basically he summarized it very well, or she summarized it very well. In the letter to the editor, in the beginning of the magazine, regarding the disparity, this is a response to the ongoing debate about shidduchim, about the shidduch crisis, how to fix it, in Mishpacha magazine, regarding the disparity between the number of girls who want to marry learning boys and the number of available said boys, aka it's easier to be a good girl than to be a good boy. It's not enough for girls to hear that it's okay to marry a guy who is working. We have to give the message to our boys early on that it's okay to be a guy who isn't learning full time, but is living his life as an erlich hayeh, davening with minyan and having a seder kavua. Boys who are driven to produce outside of yeshiva environment, whether they struggle with learning or not, need to know there are options for them that won't negate their status as a ben Torah or jeopardize their chances for shidduchim. Expanding our infrastructure to support our boys in their chosen path before they develop unhealthy coping mechanisms and diminish self-worth will ensure they are healthy, motivated, and hashkafically sound. These will be the quality working B'nai Torah that we can, in good conscience, encourage our great girls to marry. Now, every girl that goes to seminary is a great girl because she's ready to work for her husband, who's living and learning in Kollel for 100 years. Of course, there's very few boys that actually could do that. So the whole system I mentioned educationally, as this letter said, is fundamentally wrong. There's going to be more good girls than good boys. And educationally, it's a mistake. Seminary, besides the fact that it costs parents $40,000 or $80,000, it's very expensive. It sends the wrong message to the child. Besides for all of those facts, also, what they're teaching the girls is that they should be living the Kollel lifestyle, and it just creating a shidduch crisis. That's really what it's doing. It's creating a shidduch crisis because it's creating an impossible reality. Now, obviously, the yeshivas contribute to this also because they don't allow for boys who are not, the top boys to go and explore the working world, and it shouldn't be a taboo to be a working guy, and therefore it should be a line that the good girls will marry the good boys. You could be a good boy even if you know how to learn, but you went to work. It's someone has to make the money. Someone has to live a normal lifestyle, especially if you want to send your kids to seminary when they grow up. So you're going to have to be earning some money. So, besides all those problems, right, the biggest problem with seminaries is that they contribute to the shidduch crisis that this magazine is trying somehow to fix with their shidduch initiative and all their different programs. They're trying to fix the deplorable shidduch crisis. But it's very easy to fix. If you don't send your girls to seminary, it's very easy to fix because the seminaries are the ones that are teaching them that they can only marry these learning boys. And then we don't shidduch crisis like that anymore. The one thing I will add, this person who heard me, 56-year-old man, he's laughing, thinks I'm crazy, but I'm telling you the truth. The one thing I will add is that not only is it crazy, they teach the girls, they have seminary, right? They teach the girls only marry learning boys that will learn for the rest of their lives. The stuff they learn in these seminaries is crazy. They learn Gemara. They learn halachas that come from the Gemara. The boys and girls get married. If they get married, the boys know Gemara. They don't know halacha practically. The girls are teaching the halachas about Shabbos. They're teaching the halachas about kashrus. They learn these things. They know hilchos Shabbos and hilchos kashrus, and the guys have no clue. It's so sad. The guy's not working, right? You should think the one thing that, right, he has an advantage over his wife, he should be bringing in. He's the zachar. He's the one, the giver to his wife. She's the taker. She's the nekeva. At least he should be teaching her Torah, but they know more Torah. These seminaries are more Torah. Beis Yaakov, I think, is an okay idea. They shouldn't be illiterate girls, but even my daughter, she doesn't go Beis Yaakov. She's 4 years old. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old daughter, and they're both in Ganim here, not even in first grade or kindergarten, and they're teaching them brachos. What brachos you say? What's brachos? It's bracha adama. There's a concept in halal, choten shegiel lechinach, 6 or 7 years old. They're not higiel lechinach. There's no mitzvah to teach halachas, and these are girls, The girls know more about halacha l'maisa than boys. It's so sad, I have I have nieces over here in 8th grade. They're Isser Chal Isser. They're asking me Isser Chal Isser. What does Isser Chal Isser mean? What are they learning in these seminaries? We have to teach them so much. They need to know all the details, the minutia of the Torah. They need to be part of Zichru program. Is that what's going to be in the future? They're part of Zichru program. We need the women to do this. All in the Haredi world, they look down upon women rabbis and things like that. But that's essentially what Haredim are doing. They're sending these seminaries. They're saying seminaries is of utmost importance. And even in Beis Yaakov here, they're teaching the things that even boys don't know. True, the boys should be learning what the girls are learning. So that's another point that makes a lot of sense. The boys shouldn't be learning Gemara. They should have set aside time to learn halacha, at least an hour a day to learn the practical halachas of kashrus and Shabbos. You need to know when you get married. Forget about learning about how to treat a wife and all about managing finances and things like that. Boys know nothing going into marriage, and they're still airheaded when they go into marriage. They learn kol about a buy and rub over the next 20 years of their lives. Their heads in the air. Their wives are managing the finances for them. This woman, this principal even says that her husband was an accountant and she was managing the finances for her husband. If a man's not managing the finances, that's sad. It's sad if the man is not. That's a man's job. He should be managing the finances. The woman's, she's working, but she's managing the finances. They had a serial here, that just concluded a growth curve where the woman, the wife, she's managing the finances. She's giving money to her husband. Her husband couldn't manage the money. It's sad. It's really sad. So the seminaries are making the girls extra strong, masculine almost, right? And the men are staying in yeshiva until they're 30 years old, sleeping half of the day, drinking coffee the other half of the day. And of course, there's going to be no good boys left for these girls. So it's creating a shidduch crisis. It's creating, even if they get married, you have the women ruling over their husbands because, of course, they're working. They're bringing in the parnasa. They're earning all the money, taking care of the finances, managing the finances, and they know more halacha, more Torah than their husbands, practically. It's very sad. The whole seminary system, the whole Jewish system is warped. It's backwards. It's not just a problem. It's a huge problem. So the shidduch crisis is part of the problem. With seminaries, and they added, even before seminary, they added the total education. We're educating girls so much about Torah. You don't need to educate on Torah. The practical education about Torah should be shifted to the boys, who should at least, if they're not going to be working, at least know enough to pass kind of shaila in their own house or know what to ask the rabbi. It's sad. It's really, really sad. So, in summation, these two things, we talked about Zichru today, we talked about seminaries over here. It looks like we'll be heading the next Zichru campaign. There'll be women from seminaries answering these questions. Hopefully not. It's a sad situation. Listen, Zichru is not the answer. Ian is the answer. Seminaries is not the answer. The answer is to whatever you're teaching in seminary, not to teach them, and teach them the opposite, that marrying working boys is okay. Don't send your girls to seminary. I think it's a big mistake. A lot of them, just drink smoothies all day and go to the kosel. And the ones that are serious about it, they're going to end up knowing more than the boys, and it's sad. It's really sad. And, of course, they're not going to be mature from this. Who think they're going to be mature from having your parents' credit card? The whole system is messed up. And, this is Mishpacha magazine. I mean, society has a lot of problems, so the Jewish world also has a lot of problems. Two of those problems are highlighted in today's discussion. Hope you enjoyed. See you next week.